The most powerful diplomat in American history died at 100 years old, surrounded by accolades and honors, having never been prosecuted for any crime. He also died one of the most hated men in the world. Millions celebrated his death. The question isn't whether Henry Kissinger was evil. The question is whether he believed the cost of his power was someone else's to pay. He was born Heinz Alfred Kissinger in 1923 in a small Bavarian town where his father taught at a girls' school, a job his father loved, a job the Nazis took away because they were Jewish. Heinz was 15 when they fled to America. He watched his father, once respected, become a bookkeeper in a factory, diminished, quiet, powerless. He watched relatives who stayed behind disappear into camps. The lesson wasn't subtle. The world was violent. The world rewarded strength. And if you had no power, the world erased you. So he changed his name to Henry and learned to speak English without an accent, but he never lost the refugees' central terror, the fear of being disposable. He joined the army, returned to Germany as a translator during the war, and saw the camps himself, walked through the evidence of what happens when you don't matter, when you're on the wrong side of power. Most men would have come away wanting justice. Henry came away wanting to make sure he would never be powerless again. He went to Harvard, not to belong, but to master. He studied philosophy and history, obsessed with one question: how do the powerful stay powerful? He didn't want to understand morality. He wanted to understand control. His professors saw brilliance. What they didn't see was the mechanism underneath it, a relentless need to be indispensable. He wrote a dissertation on the Congress of Vienna about how empires keep order, about how stability requires someone willing to manage the chaos without flinching. He was writing his own instruction manual. But intelligence alone doesn't get you into the room. For years, he was an outsider, a professor, a consultant, watching men with less insight make decisions he believed he could make better. The frustration was unbearable. He cultivated relationships with powerful people, offered analysis, made himself useful, always useful, but he wasn't chosen. Not by Kennedy, not by Johnson. He was brilliant, yes, but he wasn't trusted. He had the mind of a strategist, but the aura of someone who wanted power a little too openly. So he waited, and the waiting sharpened something inside him. Then Richard Nixon won the presidency, a man as paranoid and insecure as Kissinger, but with something Henry lacked: electoral power. Nixon didn't want advisors who would challenge him. He wanted someone brilliant enough to execute his vision and hungry enough to stay loyal. Kissinger was appointed National Security Advisor in 1969. He was 45 years old, finally inside the room. And once inside, he made sure the room became his. He centralized power, sidelined the State Department, ran foreign policy through back channels that only he controlled. He didn't just want influence, he wanted to be the only one who mattered. Every major decision, every negotiation had to go through him. It was strategic, yes, but it was also personal. The refugee who once had no power now held all of it, and he used it. Vietnam was burning. Protests were everywhere. The war was unwinnable, but ending it without losing face was the only goal that mattered. Kissinger pursued peace through escalation, bombing campaigns in Cambodia and Laos, civilian deaths in the hundreds of thousands. He called it necessary. He called it realism. What he didn't call it was his responsibility. When asked later about the suffering, he would frame it as tragedy, not choice, as if the bombs fell on their own, as if someone else's hand was on the trigger, but it was his strategy, his meetings, his memos. The distance between the decision and the death allowed him to sleep. Then came the opening to China, a diplomatic masterpiece. Secret meetings, strategic genius, reshaping the global balance of power. Historians would call it his greatest achievement, and it was, but it was also a performance. Kissinger loved being the indispensable man, the only one who could pull it off. He didn't just want to succeed, he wanted everyone to know they needed him to succeed. The praise mattered as much as the policy, maybe more. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1973 for negotiating the end of the Vietnam War, the same war he had prolonged, the same war that would continue for 2 more years, killing thousands more. One of the other recipients refused the prize, calling the peace incomplete. Kissinger accepted. He didn't see the irony, or if he did, he didn't care. Peace wasn't the point, the prize was. But power is expensive, and the bill comes in pieces. His first marriage ended. He was too consumed, too obsessed. Relationships required presence, vulnerability, things he couldn't afford. He remarried, but even then, those close to him described a man who was always performing, always calculating, never quite there. He had subordinates, not friends, admirers, not intimacy. The refugee boy who feared invisibility had made himself the center of everything. But the center is a lonely place. And the decisions kept compounding, supporting Pakistan during the genocide in Bangladesh, backing the coup in Chile that brought Pinochet to power. Kissinger would say these were necessary evils, that the Cold War demanded difficult choices, that morality was a luxury in a world of competing powers. He believed he was managing chaos. What he didn't see or wouldn't admit was that he was often creating it. The suffering wasn't incidental, it was instrumental, a cost he was willing to impose because he never had to feel it. He left office in 1977, started a consulting firm, made millions advising corporations and foreign governments, remained influential, remained relevant, but he was never in the room the same way again. He spent the rest of his life writing books, giving speeches, defending his legacy. Always defending, because the accusations never stopped. War criminal, mass murderer, architect of atrocities. He dismissed them as naive, as moralistic, as failures to understand the complexity of power. But the consistency of the criticism seemed to bother him more than he let on. He needed to be remembered as wise, not brutal, as strategic, not monstrous. The validation still mattered, even at the end. He lived to 100, outlived his critics, outlived his enemies, attended state dinners and gave interviews where younger diplomats treated him like an elder statesman. The world forgave him, or at least forgot. But forgetting isn't the same as innocence, and longevity isn't the same as peace. When he died, the obituaries called him a giant of American foreign policy. They listed his achievements, his intellect, his influence. They mentioned the controversies, but always in passing, as footnotes to greatness. The people who lost family members to his decisions wrote different obituaries. They didn't mourn. Here's what's difficult to accept. Kissinger probably died believing he had done what was necessary, that history would prove him right, that the stability he claimed to create justified the instability he caused. He wanted to be remembered as the man who understood power, and he was. But understanding power and wielding it wisely are not the same thing. He mastered the game. But the game required other people to lose, and he never seemed to wonder if that made him responsible for their losses. The boy who fled the Nazis spent his life making sure he would never be powerless again. He succeeded. He became one of the most powerful men on earth. But power didn't make him safe. It made him necessary, and necessity became its own kind of trap. He couldn't stop, couldn't step back, couldn't admit doubt, because doubt would mean the cost wasn't worth it. And if the cost wasn't worth it, then what was it all for? He won everything he wanted, the influence, the legacy, the 100 years. But if you spend your whole life afraid of being erased and you erase others to avoid it, what part of you survives? He died powerful, but he also died alone in the moral sense, defended by institutions, condemned by millions, never quite able to silence the question of whether the world was better because of him or in spite of him. The refugee wanted to matter. He mattered, but mattering and meaning are not the same. And in the end, he got to decide neither.